الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Thank you, Sister Salma, for the introduction, and thank you everybody for coming. Today is Sunday, right? And it's 6 o'clock p.m. So what can I ask for more? Thank you very much. So if I may ask you just to come a little bit, if you want to be closer. So as Selma said, I'm interested in bioethics, and more specifically in Islamic bioethics, as we're going to see right now. I'm a fellow at Harvard Medical School Center for Bioethics. I did a lot of work on Islamic bioethics from the traditional Islamic Sharia side, and then came here to complement it with the studying the Western secular bioethics at Harvard Medical School. I was astonished of the similarities in the practice and the case studies, and also was surprised of the remarkable contribution of Americans, Muslims and non-Muslims, to the field, as we're going to see. And so I became interested in studying the similarity and differences between Western secular bioethics and Islamic bioethics, and I decided to take it to a further level, and I'm going to join Hastings Center next month, which is the very well-known bioethics center in the United States, independent bioethics center, which doesn't belong to any university or academic institute. So I will start with them as a visiting scholar in May to work on the project of discovering the similarities and differences between Islamic bioethics and Western secular bioethics, to promote the mutual discussion and to find common grounds to start from. So when I talked to Salma, the field of Islamic bioethics is very wide. So I was trying to find a more appealing topic. I gave a talk last month in Johns Hopkins about Islamic bioethics, but it was very wide and include the past, the present, the future, Islamic bioethics everywhere in the world, in Arab world, in Muslim world, etc. But this time I said I have to concentrate and show the American how much they contributed to the field of Islamic bioethics. So I'm going to talk about, briefly about what is Islam for our non-Muslim brothers who are joining us, and about what bioethics for those who don't know bioethics, what's Islamic bioethics, and then the American contribution to the field. So I have no conflict of interest, at least as far as I know. And my presentation represents my personal view. I'm not here representing the Harvard University or or Imam Abdurrahman University or even Boston Islamic Seminary. I'm presenting myself here, and I'm going to mention many names and books and articles. I'm not endorsing any one of them. I'm just describing the field. I'm not receiving any fund from any party or from any institute. I'm fully sponsored by my Kingdom Scholarship, and this is my contribution to Boston Islamic Seminary, a great project that I hope it will progress, and we'll see the institute soon, inshallah. So this is an article published in the New York Times in 2010. It was about a story from a patient, a Muslim woman in her mid-30s wearing a hijab, and she came to the ER, and the first thing she asked, are there any women doctors around? And the story was, this is a hypothetical, but it was real. It was attended by one of the Muslims physician, ER physician, who is very well-known bioethicist in the United States. I'm going to talk about him, and he published actually a paper that we are going to visit. So the issue of respecting Muslim patients' needs identifying the needs, attending to the needs, is not a strange topic. It is there. And after the recent development in the United States, it becomes more obvious that Muslim patients, Muslim in general and Muslim patients in specific, they need more attention. They need to be understood and to understand their special needs as Muslims. So I'm going briefly to talk about Islam. So if I can choose one picture that captures Islam, that is the picture. Allahu Jalla Jalaluh. This is the calligraphy of the name of God in Islam, Allah. So Islam is about connecting to Allah. It's all about connecting to God, to Allah. So the word Islam literally means submission. Islam is a specific submission to God. The Muslim is the one who voluntarily submit to God. So Islam is seen as a continuation of monotheistic religion from Adam through Ibrahim to Muhammad. So it's not a new religion technically. So it's a one religion started from Adam. It's a complete system of life. We usually hear this, notion. Say in the Quran, God said, "Say indeed, my prayer, my rituals, my living, and my dying are for Allah, Lord of the worlds." This was, presented eloquently by an Italian philosopher and bioethicist called Etigici in his book Islamic Bioethics, which is an excellent book that I recommend to anyone who would like to learn about the field. He said, while in Western culture the law regulates only some sectors of behavior, the influence of Islam is far more extensive in the sphere of the private, social, political, and religious life of the believer. The result is a life system that interweaves religion and politics, the sacred and profane, the material world and the spiritual sphere in ways that are difficult to understand according to Western conceptual and judicial categories. So when we talk about Islam as a comprehensive system for life, it's literally a comprehensive system for life, as I said, but it's difficult to be understood in a secular environment where religion has a very tiny delineated area to act in. So in Islam, the 5 pillars, and excuse me for Muslim brother and sister because I'm going to repeat, very simple thing that you know. So 5 pillars of Islam. The first is declaration of faith. We call it Shahada. I say I bear witness that there is no God or deity worthy of worship except Allah, God, and Muhammad is the last messenger of Allah. The second is the obligatory prayers or Salah, the obligatory fasting or Sawm, the obligatory charity or Zakah, and the obligatory pilgrims to Mecca, which we call Hajj, for those who can afford it physically and financially. The 6 articles of belief are believe in the unity of God, believe in the angels, in revealed books, all revealed books, including the Gospel and Torah, believes in the prophets, all prophets, from Adam to Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and messengers of God, believe in the day of judgment and resurrection, believe in the divine predestination of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, one of the important issues that we need to visit when we talk about Islamic bioethics is human being, because it's the core or the center for studying the the bioethics in general. So, what Islam says about a human being? Human beings are God's most noble creation. We say to angels, prostrate to Adam, and then they prostrated. Created in the best shape. Indeed, we've created human in the best of form. Honored by Allah. He was given the honor, the dignity, given not acquired. Indeed, we honor, dignify the progeny of Adam, and raise them in status above many of our creation. Given the trust, the responsibility, the obligations. Indeed, we offer the trust to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, and they declined to bear it and feared it, but the human being, bear it. Appointed as the God's vicegerent, or the take giver, indeed, I will make upon the earth a successive authority, or called Khalifa, that is, will take care of the earth in general. Human is born pure. In Islam, the human is born pure and with the ability to excel in humanity. And Human is servant of God, as you said, and has to fulfill the bearable obligation, which we call taklif. So he's obligated. For that, human being was given the ability to distinguish and choose between right and wrong, good and evil, true and false, as God said, and we have shown the human the two ways. God equipped the human with the following. So he has the fitrah, the innate, the natural, intuitive. So the human being, as a human being, if he was left without any external effect, he or she will be able to know right and wrong. But because this fitrah, sometimes called the spiritual part, can be polluted, right? So God sends a guidance, which is the revelation, divine guidance. The human being has his own faculty to think and reflect and be rational. So he is using his rational, or she is using her rational, to understand the guidance with the light, which is the fitrah inside her. As we're going to see, this is very important in Islamic bioethics or bioethics general, because bioethics has to do with distinguishing between right and wrong, as we're going to see in examples. So in Islam, with all this, the human being navigate the life through a system. So we have a source of ethical legal rulings to decide right or wrong. The primary sources, which are agreed upon by all Muslims, regardless of their school of thought or sects or etc., are the Quran, which is the literal, according to Muslims, literal God's word. It's a revealed God's words, and the Sunnah or the Hadith, or if you want to differentiate between it, those who attended the last class on Boston Islamic Seminary, we know that Sunnah and Hadith could be synonymous. So it's the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, sayings, acts, and tactics approval, silent approval. So this is the two primary sources. Sometimes the Quran is known as the recited revelation, and the Sunnah or Hadith is known as non-recited revelation. Both are revelation. The secondary sources are many, very long list of secondary sources based on different school of thought, different sects, etc., including, for example, ijma', the consensus of scholars. Of course, there are many details. We're not going to go through it. The second is the qiyas, or the logical deductive reasoning that scholars use to find, answer to questions or solution to problems. Maslaha, this is very important for contemporary scholars. General public interest, not restricted general public interest. Istishab, we call it presumption of continuity of rulings. Istihsan, preference based on consequences. Sadd al-dhara'i, blocking means to avoid slippery slopes, etc. So we have long list, that is the secondary resources. So these are at the service of the Muslims to understand the revelation. Based on that, or from the sources, we are ended up with 5 ethical legal rulings, which are it actually shaped the life of any Muslim on any place at any time or any situation. So we have the wajib, something that you have to do, obligatory. Then come the mandub or supererogatory, that it's preferably to do it. The wajib, if you don't do it, you will be committing a sin. And there are levels of wajibs and there are levels of sins. Mandub, if you don't do it, then there is no sin, not sinful, not to do the mandub, but if you do it, you will get reward for that. Mubah, that is the neutral, the halal, something that doesn't have specific rulings, and that's why scholars debated this whether mubah or halal is part of the rulings or not part of the rulings. And then come the makruh, or the discouraged, not preferable to do it. And finally the forbidden, or as you know, haram. Right? So if the haram, you have to avoid it. And there is a difference which is between the individual ethical rulings and individual and the collective. So we have, for example, the wajib or the obligatory. We have individual obligatory, that you have to do it as an individual. while there is a collective obligatory. For example, we need physicians. So this is a collective obligation to the society to have physicians or to have nurses or engineers. But it's not necessarily that you, Selma specifically, has to go and become physician. No. But this is fardul kifaya. The first one, individual obligation, is fardul ayn. So these are the rulings that shaped anything in Islam. And as you can see, it's a spectrum. It's a wide spectrum. Most of the rulings fall in the middle, in the neutral. So most of the things are neutral by default. Al-aslu fil ashya'i al-ibaha. So by default, it's halal or it's permissible. If somebody wants to say this is not permissible, then he or she has to come up with the evidence from the sources, from the sacred sources. Otherwise, by default, it's permissible. And that is in the life. In the other side, in rituals and worship acts like salah, siyam, hajj, etc., the status quo is that you can't say this is a worship or this is ibadah or this is a ritual without an evidence. So it's prohibited unless proven otherwise. So why we have this, the wide spectrum? As you can see, we have the forbidden on one side and the obligatory on the other side. And the obligation is levels and the prohibition is levels. So in the spectrums, we have situation. And then after the prohibited comes what? Comes the makruh, or what we call discouraged. It's a transitional zone. It's an area where the human beings, we have, different species, different personalities. We have individual differences, right? Sometimes we feel weak, sometimes we are strong in faith. So it gives the human being an area to move in, right? So you don't feel in haram or forbidden because there is an area there, which is discouraged, but it's still not forbidden. On the other side, when you are strictly following your obligations, right? So there is an area for permissible, for the supererogatory or preferable before you go to the neutral. So this area is important when we think about acts in the medical field or in the social life. It's not clear, it's not white and black. You see, it's not haram and halal, prohibited or obligatory. There are an area that we can move in, and this is very useful to those who work with patients, with physicians, like Sheikh Sanusi is a chaplain. So you have an area to negotiate the rulings and the actions and the applications, as we're going to see in this example. So Islam also has a general philosophy or outlines, which we call objectives and maxims. This is not new. It's there for a long time, maybe started in the 10th or 11th century, but it attracts the attention of the contemporary scholars. It is more used in the last 100 years more than the previous centuries. So this is, for example, the higher objective of Islam. So you need to make sure that your life is going according to the higher objectives, your actions. The scholar needs to check the higher objectives to make sure the rulings he or she come up with is not conflicting the major or the objective of Islam. So we have protecting of faith. You have to protect, in Islam, the rulings has to protect the faith or religion, protect soul or life, protect mind or intellect, protect progeny and lineage and offspring. This is very important. Now we talk about surrogacy, we talk about mitochondrial replacement therapy, we talk about many things. The scholar use these kind of objectives to understand what should we say or what should we do as Muslims. Protect sources, property. We talk about scarcity of resources, right? When we talk about allocation of resources in medical field. So this is also an important thing. And finally, protecting or preserving dignity or honor that was given to a human being, not Muslims, right? So regardless of his religion or others. So the scholar use what we call ethical legal maxims. This is the major 5, but we have many, and we have sub-maxims. So this is principle of intention. Acts are judged by the intention behind them. If the physician administered analgesia to an end case patient, right, end of life care, a patient with cancer that is metastasized everywhere, and he is at the end of his life, and the physician load him with analgesia with the intention to relieve pain. Eventually, the patient died. So this is the intention, that to relieve pain, not to kill the patient, right? So principle of certainty. Certainty is not overruled by doubt. A patient at the end of life care, for example, and we are sure he is alive. He went to a coma. Now, should we decide that he died or not? This depends on what? On the principle of certainty. Here comes the brain death issue and how to define death, etc., etc. Principle of harm or injury. Harm must be eliminated. Eliminating harm in Islamic rulings or Islamic system is taking precedence on bringing goods. So that is one of the maxim. Principle of custom or precedent. Customs, or what we call the common practice, right, is the basis of judgment if not contradict Islam. We use this, for example, when you come to the medical field. What's the common practice among physicians? What is the standard of care? In order to decide, should we do this or do that? This is very important here. So, with all these sources and maxims and objectives and ways, do we have authority in Islam? Somebody who can say this is halal and this is haram, and we have to follow, we are obliged to follow? The answer is no, right? In the sense of authority that is perceived by other religions like Christianity. So this is again, Atigechi said, Islam has a considerable capacity of adaptation to situation as they vary. A peculiarity made historically possible above all by the absence of a supreme authority supervising orthodoxy. This flexibility was one of the elements which contributed to the expansion of Islam over the centuries to completely different peoples and geographical regions, without destroying the local cultures, but only instilling the few fundamental principles of the faith or worship and of Muslim law. So in general, we have freedom to look, interpret, and reflect because we don't have a supreme authority. Does that mean any one of us can go tonight and just issue fatwa? The answer is, of course, no. And that's why when we talk about authority, we need to say, what do you mean by authority in Islam? Do you have authority in Islam? No. Well, can anybody talk about fatwa or produce fatwa? No. So what's the problem? The problem is the word authority is derived here from the Christian field. So we don't have authority in the sense of the Christian field, but we have authority for those who are the scholars, Ahlul Dhikr, scholars authority. So if you want to have authority, you have to learn and attend post-Islamic seminary and others and become a scholar. So Muslim scholars decide the category based on the previous concepts. They have the sources, they have their objectives, they have many things. And in the contemporary years, they have external sources. They ask physicians like me, they ask scientists, engineers like you or others. So they need, as we're going to talk about it later. The context play an important role in deciding the category, which could differ from case to case according to the circumstantial factors, time, place, and person. So it's not wise to take one fatwa and then apply it with the same application in different places. That is dangerous, as we're going to see. So Muslim scholars depends on the specialist to provide them with the contextual facts and explanation. They need them, right? Now, how they consult them, what is the interaction ways, that is still problematic, especially in the contemporary years, as we're going to see. In case of controversies, okay, so this is one question of one of my friends, non-Muslim. In case of controversies among scholars, what the Muslim should do? The observant Muslim can choose what suits her or him, right? Based on what? There has to be a basis for that. So some scholars, Muslim scholars, promote what? Promote the precautionary choice. So ihtiyat, you have to take what is, to be on the safe side. Always be on the safe side, right? So if somebody say this is haram and somebody say this is makruh, I mean this is forbidden or this is not preferable, so what you are going to do in this case, you will choose that this is prohibited, so I will not do it. Or the other side, if one scholar said this is obligatory and some scholar said that no, this is subrogatory, which is preferable, what are you going to do? You would say, I will do it just to be on the safe side. So this is the precautionary approach. The second approach, there are many approaches. You can find in usul fiqh, many approaches, but I chose two. The first one is the precautionary choice, and this has an application in Islamic bioethics in case of brain death or others. So the precautionary approach here is what? Is not to announce death, because there is a possibility that this patient has not died yet. So we know that there is a fatwa by Majma' al-Fiqh al-Islami saying that, well, you can turn off the machines, but you cannot announce death until you just wait and see, right? So the other side on Majma' al-Fiqh al-Dawli, International Fiqh Academy, that was the Islamic Fiqh Academy in Mecca. International Fiqh Academy in Jeddah said, no, you can turn off the machines and you can announce death. Actually, you can announce death before turning off the machines, because you decided you diagnose the patient as a brain dead patient. What's the difference? The difference is the first, you turn off and you wait. And the second one, you don't turn off, you announce. What's the implications? Oh, big implication on organ transplantation, right? So physicians prefer second opinion, not the first opinion. Interestingly, both opinions issued by two councils in Saudi Arabia. Of course, two councils doesn't represent Saudi Arabia. They represent all Muslim countries, all Muslim scholars. The difference is simple. In the first council, they represent scholar by themselves. In the second, they represent countries. So they are representative of their countries, right?
The first council, the
Islamic Fiqh Council in Mecca, that is under the umbrella of Muslim World League, which is non-governmental organization. And the other one is the International Islamic Fiqh Academy, which is under the umbrella of the Munظamah al-Ta'awun al-Islami, the Islamic Cooperation Organization, IOC. Islamic Organization Corporation. So interestingly, physicians in Saudi Arabia, they chooses the second because it promotes what? Organ transplantation, organ harvesting, right? And the policy and procedures right now in Saudi Arabia is on the second, not the first, right? So they were not precautionary in their choice. They goes with the more beneficiary on their choice, and which is the second. The second is actually choosing the easiest rulings, which we called principle of promoting ease. If there is no definite ruling, no definite evidence, dalil from the scriptures, from the Quran or the Sunnah, now you have space to say, well, I'll take the easier rulings. This is very well established principle in Islam. Allah said in the Quran, He has chosen you and has not placed upon you in the religion any difficulty. He said, Allah does not charge a soul except with that within its capacity. Allah intends for you ease and doesn't intend for you hardship. And the Prophet said to one of the companions who sent him, I think, to Yemen or some places to educate them and to take care of them, make things easy to people and do not make things difficult to them. And the Prophet's wife, beloved wife, Sayyidatuna Aisha said, whenever the Prophet had to choose between two things, he adopted the easier one, provided it was not a sin. That means it's not clear a sin, right? It's not clearly a sin. So it's something that is not mentioned in the Quran or the Hadith, for us, of course, and it's not clear. There is debates. So in this case, the observing Muslim can choose the easier. What's the importance of these principles for us, for us, we have an area to move in to take a decision at the end of life care, for example, at the abortion care, at many things. So it has an implication. Of course, it has to be it's not contradicting clear scriptural textual evidence. So what about the illness? We talk about bioethics, right? So illness. Muslims view illness as a trial or a test of faith from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and is intended as a cleansing by Him, not as a banishment. The Prophet said, no Muslim is afflicted by a harm, be in the pricking of a thorn or something more painful than that, but Allah thereby causes his sins to fall away, just as a tree sheds its leaves. At the same time, Muslims are encouraged to seek treatment. The Prophet said, when Allah created the disease, He also created the cure, so seek the cure. That is very encouraging, to discover new treatment, new cure for diseases. So seeking remedy, okay, so does that mean this is an order and seeking remedy is obligatory, wajib? Not necessarily, we'll see. Could be obligatory, seeking remedy could be obligatory, favorable, permitted, unfavorable, or prohibited. Depend on the jurist methodology and the contextual factor, which is the time, place, person, medical facts, and sometimes community interest. Like, for example, in epidemics, right? In epidemics, if you are a suspect case of Ebola, for example, or suspect case for, infectious, contagious disease, then in this case you are obliged to take the medication. If you said, no, I don't want it, you said, no, you have to. Or sometimes you have to be forced to stay in the quarantine or in the hospital to make sure before releasing you to the community that you are safe for the community, right? So it can be obligatory, for example, life-saving treatment. You have to take the treatment to save your life. Or supererogatory, if benefit more than harm. If the benefit and harm is the same, right, and it's not life-saving, of course not life-saving, so it becomes permissible. If harm more than benefit, then it's not encouraged or discouraged, especially if it will make your life miserable, the quality of life. It will interfere with your daily obligation and work. And finally, if the treatment leads to death, definitely leads to death, then it's prohibited, or in very details, it's not beyond the scope of this presentation. What about death? Muslims believe that death is departure of the soul from the body by divine decree. It's a gateway from this short but mortal existence to a life of immortality in the afterlife. Death is not the end of this life, because this life is not the only life. We have been in our mother's womb. This is life, and then we come to this life, and we're going to the other life, so it's a continuation of life. Death is unpredictable, and this is very important, and can happen at any time. That actually an issue when we talk about the end of life care, and because we expect death. We can't say this patient will die tomorrow 5 o'clock p.m. We can say, well, we think that he will not be survived until next week, so we give our judgment. As such, Muslims should always be prepared for the inevitable and for what is about to occur. No one should wish death. The Prophet said, none of you should wish for death because of a calamity befalling him. But if he has to wish for death, he should say, oh Allah, this is a prayer, oh Allah, keep me alive as long as life is better for me, and let me die if death is better for me. And there is a story behind this hadith or sunnah, that the Prophet visited that patient, and he was so sick, and he said, Prophet said, I remember yesterday you were bitter. And he said, yes, I was asking God to give me more, because this cleansing my sins, etc. And the Prophet said, subhanallah, this is not why you said that. Instead of asking for more suffering, you should ask for relieving of your suffering. And then he taught him this one. And this actually occurred in one case here a child from one of the Arab countries, and at the end of his life, he has cancer, metastatic cancer, and he was refusing, the analgesic that will, knock him down, etc. And he told, this is what I have been told by the attending bioethicists. He said, well, do you know that in Islam, the more we suffer, the more we, get reward, and that's why I want to suffer. So I told her, this is not right. He misunderstood his religion. Of course, we are rewarded for our suffering if we keep patient, but we should we should not ask for suffering. We should ask for relief of that suffering, and this is evident in these sayings. The Prophet said, none of you should wish for death. If she is righteous, perhaps she may add to her good deeds, and if she is sinner, perhaps she may repent. Don't kill yourself. This is an ayah from the Quran. Do not kill yourselves or one another. Indeed, Allah is to you ever merciful. Whoever kills a believer intentionally, his recompense is hell, wherein he will abide eternally, and Allah has become angry with him and has cursed him and has prepared for him a great punishment. Very strong statement. Whoever kills a soul, unless for a soul or for corruption done in the land, it's as if he had slain mankind, and whoever saves one, it is as if he had saved mankind. This is the logo of the white helmet, you remember? So, whoever saves one life, it's as if he had saved mankind. So this ayah and hadith are very important when we talk about what? We talk about euthanasia, we talk about physician-assisted suicide, right? So you should, as a Muslim, we should not ask for death, we should not wish death, we should ask for relieving suffering, and we should be patient. Extremes. How many of you have seen this? Extremes on Netflix. It was, I think this is one of the short films, right? So this is about the end of life care, which is the most common case discussed in clinical ethics, right, Sheikh Sanusi? Yes, maybe 80 to 90% of cases discussed in clinical ethics committee is end of life care, are end of life care cases. So, what is bioethics that everybody is talking about? I think I need to, the electricity is not sure. Something. So how many of you have heard the word bioethics before today? I know some of our sisters here are experts, mashallah, and she has been working for a long time in the field. I think, yes. Shukran, jazakallah. Thank you very much. So, before today, how many of you have heard this word, bioethics? Biomedical ethics or medical ethics? MashaAllah. So, you are familiar with it. So, what is bioethics? What does it mean, biomedical ethics? So, there is many different, definitions. But this is, some of the definitions that I wanted to. An updated and expansion of the ancient field of medical ethics. So, long time ago, it was known as medical ethics. So, it is confined to what? To the medical field. But later on, it expanded for the science and the ecology, etc., etc., etc. So, the application of ethics to the field of medicine in healthcare. Or, I like this definition, the field that asks philosophers, along with lawyers, public policy makers, nurses, physicians, medical anthropologists, to look at the most challenging moral issue that our generation faces. So it is what? It's a multidisciplinary field, or interdisciplinary field, or even transdisciplinary field. What's the difference between these terms? I don't know, but So you bring people from different professions together in one place, and you discuss one thing. Why? Because it has to do with that. So it's not only about philosophy, which philosophy is talking about right and wrong, right? So if you are religious, you talk about religion, religious bioethics, as we're going to see. Lawyers, because there is implications. Public policy makers, we talk about reallocation of resources. Nurses, they are always at the front line in these cases. Physician, medical anthropologist, how people deal with these issues. So it's a multidisciplinary. It started in the 70s. It's not an old, if we talk about bioethics. But we talk about medical ethics, it's very long field. So in 1970, Potters, an oncologist, wrote his book, Bioethics, the Science of Survival. Then Andre Hilligers established Kennedy Institute of Ethics at Georgetown University. Very important place for Islamic bioethics, as we're going to see. 1973, Dan Callahan, the founder of Hastings Center, wrote his influential article, Bioethics as a Discipline. And in 1977, Beauchamp and Childers published their influential book, Principles of Medical Bioethics. This is the book. This is the most, so to say, the most, used book in bioethics as a textbook in our field, inside the United States and outside the United States. So the 4 fundamental principles. This: respect of autonomy, non-maleficence, beneficence, and justice. Can you recognize it? It's everywhere. We talk about principle of bioethics, we talk about 4. So it's a canonical text for the world's bioethicists. This is a statement by Pellegrino, the chairman of President's Council of Bioethics in the United States. So this book is very influential. But that doesn't mean it's a matter of consensus. In fact, some people, they don't like it. For example, here, a quote from 2 prominent bioethicists, American bioethicists, Clauser and Gert. We believe that this principles of biomedical ethics is mistaken and misleading. It must conceive both theory and practice. Very harsh, right? But a moderate, so to say, criticism. A thorough familiarity with patients and children is essential for participating in the modern debates in biomedical ethics. However, we regard this text as neither definitive nor authoritative. So there is an area for other ideas and views. And that's why we have long list of theories in the field of bioethics. I'm talking here about Western secular bioethics. So we have the utilitarianism, right? Kantianism, deontology, virtue ethics, ethics of care, casuistry, very important. This is a very ancient method in the Christianity and in Islam also, the case-based, like the Hanafi school of fiqh, right? So it's case-based. Communitarian ethics, feminist ethics, very important. Narrative ethics now is gaining. So narrative ethics, casuistry or case-based, and utilitarianism, deontology. These 4 are more, strong, challenger to principalism, or competitors. So, as we see, the field of bioethics is not a consensus. In fact, there is a problem with the current Western secular bioethics, as stated by Catherine Meiser. Catherine Meiser is an anthropologist, American anthropologist, and she wrote this chapter in this book, The Ethics of Bioethics, Mapping the Moral Landscape. She is questioning. She said, ironically, in this field, for which norms are central focus of study, right? We need to identify norms. We have inadequately recognized and questioned the normativity of whiteness in the cultural construction of bioethics. So the current Western secular bioethics field does not reflect all understanding of human beings. It is very specific to certain historical context, developed from a certain historical context, as we all know. So that's why the religious bioethics continue. Even in the United States, we have, for example, these 2 books, Encyclopedia of Jewish Medical Ethics, Bioethics and Christianity. So it continues, right? So from this point, I'd like to talk about Islamic bioethics as part of what? Religious bioethics in the United States. So what is Islamic bioethics? We know now bioethics. So Islamic bioethics is similar to bioethics. Islamic bioethics is a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary field, right? So there is multiple people in the same room talking about one thing. So we are physicians, scholar, sheikh, jurist. The scholar could be jurist, faqih. Could be theologian, right? متكلم في العقيدة. Could be what? Could be في التزكية, Sufism. Could be what else? Could be a lawyer. Now the anthropologists, they are starting to talk about bioethics in Islam, and so on. So lots of people around the table, and they talk about one thing. Muslim and non-Muslim. interested in bioethics, healthcare providers, scholars, theologians, philosophers, jurists, lawyers, ethicists, community members are engaged in this. However, jurists have the upper hand due to ethical legal nature of Islamic rulings, right? It's obvious that at the end, who is going to issue the fatwa? The jurist. But they need the help of others. So we talk about what? We talk about finding answer to ethical questions in biomedical field based on Islamic principles. So, do I have time now? Excellent. So I'll jump just now. This is very important, but try to go through it quickly. So people said, what is Islamic about Islamic bioethics? What makes Islamic bioethics different from others? We can say, roughly that there is three areas: relevance to ontology, what is real, what is not this word; relevance to epistemology; relevance to axiology, as we're going to see. This is a very good book by Sherman Islam. I summarized this 3 chapter, comparative study of secular and Islamic bioethics, published by the IIIT, right? It's in their website. So she talked about, for example, the real. So there is, in Islam, there is God, the absolute being, worthy of worship, as you said. There is an external world. So this word is not the only word. There is an external word independent of our experience. Alamul ghaib. God's prophets through revelation are our connection to the other world. Humans are matter and spirit. They are not only, they are organism, not mechanism. We are not only physiology and biology, we have spirits. That's what makes us different. The universe has a definitive purpose. There is a purpose for our existence, for this world, realization of value. So all these things. The other thing is about epistemology. As we talk about absolute knowledge belongs to Allah alone. So our knowledge is relative. That makes us human being humble, right, and open to learn. So we talked about the 3 things that equip the human: fitra, aql, wahi. And these humans have 3 levels of knowing: sensory, rational, and there is a part which is spiritual. So humans' purity of hearts is not a matter of spirituality only. It's actually help human being to learn and to reach the truth. So the pureness of hearts in human beings will help her to reach the truth. And finally, relevance to what is good, what is right, what is wrong. Islam provides a clear and authoritative source of value on what is ethically good and bad according to well-defined principles found in the Quran, prophetic teaching, understandable by human reasoning faculty, and enhanced by human natural innate or fitra or purity. Humans' inner purity and sincerity qualify the human being to be guided and to know the truth and to reach the value. So, what's Islamic in Islamic bioethics? Its sources, its objective purpose, tools, and its principle, which is universal as we believe. What are the topics discussed? Many topics discussed. This is just only a short list. Abortion, autopsy, assisted reproductive technology, organ donation, end-of-life care, euthanasia, physician-assisted suicide, premarital counseling, genetic testing, and a long list of that. We need answer to questions and solution to problems in this field. And this field is not theoretical, it's not academic. This is very practical day-to-day work. Our work, like Sheikh Sanusi knows in the hospital, as a physician, as a nurse, as a social worker, we work daily on these things. So I'm not going to discuss it, but because today we are talking about what? We talk about American contribution to Islamic bioethics. Who needs Islamic bioethics? Who are our audience? Patients, Muslim patients and their relatives, Muslim healthcare providers, healthcare institutions, Muslim leaders, policymakers, and others. You can think of any one who would benefit from knowing the Islamic bioethics. So how issues are discussed? We talked about an interdisciplinary field, right? So there is a process to reach an answer. In Islam, we call it ijtihad. So you struggle to know the answer, to think, to reason, to review, to search and research to reach the answer. There is 2 types of ijtihad. Individual, which is the very well known throughout our history, and what we call collective ijtihad jama'i. So in our days, in the last 100 years in Muslim world, collective ijtihad is becoming more and more common. Now we have councils everywhere. We have councils here in America. We have the North American Council. We have councils South Africa, Australia, everywhere, UK. Why? Because it's not anymore an individual decision. It's a collective decision. And that's why in the council we need different peoples. So it's not anymore the sheikh or the Muslim scholar, what we call scholar of text. They know the text very well, right? So we need what? We need scholar of context, which is Muslim healthcare professional scientist. So anyone who will describe the context, the situation, is needed beside the jurists. That is not to belittle the jurist rule, no at all. Their rule actually is the crucial rule. They are going to issue the fatwa, but before they issue the fatwa, they have to, it's not a choice, they have to ask the scholar of context, the specialist. And not only to ask them, they need to be engaged in discussion. And that is what we are calling to. This is clearly in one of the beautiful articles written by Ghali, Dr. Muhammad Ghali, one of the leading bioethicists in our world. He said, after being equipped with sufficient information about technical aspects, religious scholar would embark upon their normative rule by constructing the religio-ethical Islamic standpoint. So they need sufficient equipped. Who is going to equip them with the sufficient information? The specialist, the physician, the engineer, the economist. So they need them. They need them. This is an article called Biomedical Scientist and Physician as a Co-Mufti. So they are co-muftis. They are not only asked to provide information, they must be engaged in the discussion and in the decision making. So this exercise, this activity is not new. It's there for a long time. We have in our history the people who were physicians and at the same time were jurists or theologian or philosopher, right? So we have Al-Razi Abu Zakaria, jurist and physician. We have Ibn Sina, philosopher and physician. We have Ibn Rushd. Rushd is a jurist, philosopher and physician. In fact, his book in fiqh or jurisprudence is the textbook in the Islamic University in Medina in Saudi Arabia. So he is a very well established jurist and judge also. Ibn al-Nafis, Shafi'i jurist. Ibn al-Nafis, anything special about Ibn al-Nafis? The one who discovered the small circulation, the cardiac circulation, so cardiopulmonary. That is in 1288. Ibn Abdin recently died. This is the Mufti, the Hanafi Mufti of Syria. He was a physician, practicing physician. He has his clinic. And he is the Mufti, the Sheikh, right? And he died in 1981. I think he was 90 years old when he died. We have now Dr. Muhammad Ali al-Bar, my teacher. He is a physician, and he is a jurist, a faqih. He writes books and that talk about Islamic bioethics, and he quoting jurists, and he discussed jurisprudence. We have recently heard about Sa'd al-Din al-Uthmani in Morocco. Have you heard his name? The new, prime minister in Morocco. He's a physician and he's a faqih, both. So this field, having fiqh and medicine together is not something new. The new thing about it is now it is more established, more organized. So what about the topic of this lecture, Islam in Islamic bioethics in America? Islam in America is not new, as you all know. This is a book called Thomas Jefferson Quran, Islam and Founders. Talk about how Jefferson purchased the copy of a Quran a few years before he wrote the Declaration of Independence document. So the Quran was there in his library, and the historian Dennis Spielberg from Austin University in Texas, she talked about it. Very nice book. I recommend to read it. So Muslims were here from the 18th century, the middle of. So Islam is not new in America. Islam is part of America. I think now we have about 0.9% of Americans are Muslims, or about 1%, so 3 million or 3.3. So Islam is here. Muslims are everywhere. They are physicians, they are nurses, they are engineers, they are Muslim, they are patients, right? So everywhere. But in America, the first document that I could found was the translation of this 9th century Muslim book about Adab al-Tabib, the practical ethics of physicians. This was published in 1967 in the Transactions of American Philosophical Society. They translated the book Adab al-Tabib. So what Adab al-Tabib book talk about? It talks about the physician, the medical ethics actually. So this is the content. I'm not going to through. So they talk about medical ethics. This is probably the first English article or English work about Islamic bioethics in America. But the breakthrough or the landmark of Islamic bioethics is quoted in the interview with this great influential bioethicist of our time. This is Tom Basham, the famous bioethicist, the one who authored the book, and he's still alive. And this is an interview. You can please go see it on the YouTube. People and Perspective, Tom Basham, in the beginning. He said, Andre is the founder of Kennedy Institute of Ethics, wanted to have Muslim scholars, Jewish scholars, Protestant scholars, and Catholic scholars in conversation. In addition to Christian scholars, they brought in a couple of Muslim scholars and Jewish scholars. So in the early days, that who was sitting around the table in the 70s. So Muslim scholars were there at the beginning of bioethics field in the United States of America. This is a first article published with a clear, with bioethics word on the title, Islam and Bioethics, by Usman Bakr. He is a scholar from Malaysia, but he published this article when he was working in Temple University of Philadelphia. This was published in Greek Orthodoxy Theology Review, 1986. This is part of his thesis in the university. So he talked about Islam and bioethics. That is 1986. So it's very early, in the early stage. Then Fazlur Rahman, very well-known Muslim scholar, and was consultant to the, here he talked about health and medicine. And then in 1987, this is a question, right? So this is the resolution from the Islamic Fiqh Academy, International Islamic Fiqh Academy. The question came from where? This question came from the International Islamic Relief Committee of North America. So there were many questions. So the questions come from America to the International Council, which host the discussion with many Muslim scholars, including scholars from United States and from Europe. This is the IIIT, International Institute of Islamic Thought in Virginia. Their contribution started in the early 80s by publishing books about the Islamic perspective on science and, of course, in medicine. And one of the best books they published is this one, Ethics of Assisted Reproductive Medicine. You can find it on your website. You can download it from your website. It's very, very good book. You can read it if you are interested, and I recommend to read it. This is a very well-known and very influential Islamic bioethicist, Dr. Abdulaziz Sachidina. He is the IIIT Chair in Islamic Study at George Mason University, and his contribution is by writing, for example, for writing the book Islamic Biomedical Ethics. This is a good book, but before that, he wrote an entry in the Encyclopedia of Bioethics. That was in 1994. It's published right now in the 2014, the 4th edition, with an entry on Islamic bioethics. You can go and read it. This is one of the American bioethicists contributing. This is a non-Muslim bioethicist, American bioethicist, Jonathan Prokop, and he has remarkable contribution. He edited 2 books, 2 important books. The first is Islamic Ethics of Life, Abortion, War, and Euthanasia in 2003. And then he published another book in 2007. Both books actually made substantial contribution to the field and led to discussion, especially when he talks about euthanasia in Islam. Another contributor is Dr. Asim Badella. Asim Badella is a physician, emergency medicine physician, and he is the director of the Initiative on Islam and Medicine in the University of Chicago. This is very successful program. They are hosting physicians and nurses. They train them. They have courses. They have summer school, and they have conferences. And actually, they published a lot. About 52 papers published and more. Of course, this is by Asim, and more on the field. And he just published in December 2016 very important article titled Social Responsibility and the State's Duty to Provide Healthcare and Islamic Ethical Legal Perspective. If you are interested in the discussion, in the ongoing discussion about healthcare, which is now everywhere, so I recommend that you read this article. It will give you insight about what is Islamic Ethical Legal Perspective has to say. Is healthcare a human right in Islam? Is it an obligatory for the state or not obligatory? Right? So this is very important, and the discussion is ongoing right now. Asim conducted a very important study to show the need for Islamic bioethics in the United States of America. In his survey of American Muslim physicians in 2013, he found that 55% of American physicians never or rarely read Islamic bioethics book. How many physicians with us here? Good. How many nurses? So we are 3 now. Okay. So how many sociologists? Okay. How many anthropologists? How many engineers? Yes. Okay. So 55, more than half of American Muslim physicians, they have never, rarely read Islamic bioethics book. 64% never or rarely consult Islamic jurists. 79 never or rarely look to Islamic Medical Fiqh Academy verdicts, like this, like the previous one. 77 never or rarely seek guidance from imams when facing a bioethics challenge. 95 of Muslim doctors never assisted imams with bioethics cases, which is the duty that we are expecting from them. Not to issue fatwa, but to assist imams. If the imam, for example, this is 95%, if the imam was faced with a problem and he needs to seek help from a physician or a nurse, he needs information, but nobody was there. What do you expect the imam to do? The imam will be under pressure to give an answer, right? So sometimes they might go for fatwa books, right? Ready-made fatwa books, which is, I think, is problematic. Because when we talk about fatwa, we talk about the context, we talk about the case, we talk about the time, different patients, different circumstances, right? So this is an extremely important study. Hopefully after 5 years, things will change. So this is the third contributor that I want to talk about, Dr. Ayman Shabana from Georgetown University, with his excellent project on Islamic bioethics. It's an Islamic bioethics project, global database. So this is a database at Georgetown University library that you can log in. You can send them an email. They have articles about this and titles of books. And at some of the books, I'm not sure they have the link. So Islamic Medical and Scientific Ethics, this is Bioethics Research Library. So this is specific for bioethics. And this is again Islamic Bioethics. And they are going to publish Encyclopedia of Islamic Bioethics, which I had the honor to contribute to it by 2 entries so far. So these are 2, 3, 4 universities in the United States. They are providing support to this field. They contributed to the field. And we have the non-governmental organization, IMANA. What is IMANA? Islamic Medical Association of North America, right? So they actually have a very valuable contribution. That was the Journal of the Islamic Medical Association of North America. This is unfortunately stopped publishing articles in 2012, or I think 2013. Unfortunately, it's a sad news to know, but I hope those who are in charge will reconsider activating this journal. This is very important because they have actually a lot of articles about Islamic bioethics.
So I have a question. Are there also like some these like cases or like sort of jurisprudence of bioethics that you could talk about?
We'll take it when we come to the discussion. We'll have some cases. So again, we come back to the article published by the New York Times, and they actually publish more than there is more cases in the media about the needs for Muslim patients, Muslim female or male Muslim patients. This is a good source for those who are practicing in the field. This is by University of Washington. Ethnomed. Ethnomed is a website where you can search for Islamic resources. You can download it and you can use it. And this is one of the important books for practitioners. I think Sheikh Sanusi knows about this book. This is called Islamic Approaches to Patient Care, Muslim Beliefs and Healthcare Practice for Caregivers. This is written by Sister Rauva Sherry Twill. I think she is a socialist or sociologist. Yes, and sorry? She is a chaplain. Yes, she is a Muslim chaplain. And this is an excellent book. And it was reviewed extensively by many scholars, American scholars. I think, I don't know, Hamza Yusuf reviewed it or others, but there are many scholars in the introduction who reviewed it, and it covers almost all aspects that Muslim chaplain needs to know about it in a simple language. So this is one of the contribution of the American Muslim scholars to the field of Islamic bioethics. And as you can see, there is exponential increase, continuous, steadily increase in the articles published in the field. 50% of these articles comes from the United States of America. So 50% of articles published in Islamic bioethics come from USA. That means the field is growing and it attracts attention in the United States. Today, as we are talking, 2 courses were conducted. One in Canada, Islamic Bioethics, this one with Dr. Sajidina there, and that was just finished a few hours ago in London, Islamic and Biomedical Ethics. So the field is growing. The field is gaining momentum, and there are needs for contributions. As we're going to take the case, if my colleague here has a case, or I can bring a case. So there are many cases that needs people to talk about it. Finally, I would like to recommend a free online open access book for you. Those books that I've mentioned before are not free. You have to, pay for it. But this book is a recent book, Contemporary Bioethics, Islamic Perspective. You can download it. You can share it. It's free. It's totally free. One of the Saudi wealthy men paid for the Springer company to make this book open access free book. It's called Contemporary Bioethics, Islamic Perspective, written by 2 bioethicists, leading bioethicists. Dr. Muhammad Al-Bar, as I have said, has written more than 80 books, most of books in Arabic. and he is a regular consultant for Islamic Fiqh Academy and the International Islamic Fiqh Academy and many councils for the last 35 or 40 years, right? And Dr. Basha is the same thing. He's younger, but you know, the same thing. So they are experts, and it was forwarded by Dr. Sajidina, and I had the honor to review the book before publishing the book. It's very good book, and it's updated. So it was published in 2015. Most of the cases that we are going to discuss now are discussed in the book. So thank you very much for your patience. I have reached my, the end of my presentation, and I'm ready for questions. Thank you. Do you have any case, or should we talk about? If you have questions, or we can bring some cases. Okay. Sanusi, would you like to bring case? Okay, go ahead. Our sister, yes, please.
In the case of where you said it's prohibited if treatment leads to death, and this comes to the question of end of life, where opiates are used, and some, even though I think the most recent study is that it does not hastens death, and then there's this confusion about whether it should or could not be used.
Yes, thank you.
The question also is relating to end of life nutrition.
Okay, so now we have the end of life. What is the when we talk about our sister? She is, mashallah, Muslim chaplain. She has experience in this area. So when we talk about the end of life care, it's wide. But let's talk about what she mentioned. If you have a patient, a female, 35 years old, and she has a breast cancer, metastasized everywhere, and now what do you want to do? You need to help her so she may die, with less pain. So if you give her more analgesic, we used to think or believe, some people, that if you give her more, you will hasten death, right? Because of the opioid, the respiratory center, prohibit the respiratory center, etc., and she will stop breathing. But recent articles or systematic reviews showed that this is not necessarily the case. However, it's a possibility, right? So if this is a possibility, that if you give her this the analgesia, she might die. Should you give her or not? That's the question, right, my brother? Should you give her or not? Now, the Muslim scholar said, yes, you can give her, because your intention is not to kill her. Your intention is to relieve pain. That's one. Second, she is actually in the dying process. So she is tahtadir. So she is dying, but you are trying to relieve her pain. And the medication might expedite her, the dying process. Like on the other side, when we talk about holding or withdrawing life support interventions, we talk about delaying death. When we use the life supporting intervention, delaying death, we don't prevent death, but the process of dying, ihtidar, will be prolonged. We know the ihtidar has special rulings in Islam. So it's the final hours or days of your life where when your loved ones around you, ideally everybody around you, and you are, So with the advanced in medical, technology, this few hours becomes days, right? So in this case, if there is no, if the intervention is useless, or they used to call it futile, but now the new term is useless or inappropriate intervention. Now the Muslim scholar said, well, since seeking remedy is not always obligatory, and in this case there is no benefit of introducing this treatment, apart from prolonging احتضار, prolonging the dying process, then in this case, we can turn off the life supporting machine and letting death to occur, or to expedite, to occur quickly more than, without the life support machine. Is this killing? The answer is no. This is not killing. You're just withholding or withdrawing an intervention that is not useful to this patient to cure her disease, right? And this is what the scholar agreed upon, and there is a fatwa. I understand that there is some scholars, especially from the Indian subcontinent, that they are opposing this, right? But as far as I know, the majority of scholars in our area, and even the IMANA, the Islamic Medical Association of North America, they published actually a statement in the JIMANA, Journal of Islamic Medical Association, about this, the end of life care. That's one. The second is, so the intention here is not to kill the patient, is to relieve pain, right? So this is known as double effect in bioethics, right? But in Islamic, you said your intention is not to kill, is to help to relieve pain, and the death occurred naturally, but the medication, if the medication could hasten death, expediting the death process, which is the ihtidar. So the ihtidar became shorter than before. Sheikh Sanusi.
This matter we need to have physician opinion.
Well, thank you for that. The three physician, of course, the not opinion, according to the Muslim scholars, to decide on turning off the life machine and declaring brain death, you need three scholars to say this patient is brain dead, and then you can turn off the machines. Yes, please.
I don't have a case, but I had a question. Just based on the justification of this ruling, how is this different from physician-assisted suicide for terminally ill people who know that they are suffering from excruciating pain, and they know that there is no cure, and they know that they are going to die in a matter of like a couple months or so? How is this different? Is it just based on consciousness versus unconsciousness?
No, in physician-assisted suicide, you are introducing lethal drug to cause death. On the other side, you are not introducing lethal drug to cause death, or that can cause death, right? But you are introducing analgesics that the side effect might cause, or we say might hasten death. So it's different from this one to that. Yes, our friend here.
I've had the blessing to live an experiential end of death life. When I was 16, my Uncle Fred had throat cancer. The only boy at home, modesty issues. I nursed him till he died. 18 and 19, I took care of my mother's father until he died from pancreatic cancer. 2001, 2002, again, a cousin with throat cancer, feeding him morphine to end stage. Last November 17th, 2.5 years of 15, metastasized ovarian cancer. The latest one, overdose, approaching her final year. 2 of her best friends wasted away to 60 pounds in last year. In the Christian tradition, suicide sends you to hell. And I had problems with that. The pain from her gallbladder, she said, DJ, they say women with gallstones are like passing a baby, but this is a 10. And when I came in, I made her comfortable the night before. When I came in the next day, I had to pry the pills from her hand. She overdosed on her pain, but she wasn't even on morphine yet. But it's so personal and so painful. And I emptied her bags from her kidneys for 6 hours. She did not want to be resuscitated. of every 17 or 20 breaths I made, the autonomic would make her and when the bags went filling up, I called 911, and she was mad that I called the ambulance. But I had some Christians that believe in faith healing, and they were praying for a miracle. She was incoherent. The nurses were holding her, taking down her final testimony. When I came back 3 days later, she was coherent and eating. They're mad at me still.
Well, it can happen, you know.
Sometimes,
Sometimes the diagnosis might.
another 6 months.
Yeah, you are right. 'Cause sometimes the diagnosis is not accurate or misdiagnosed. It happens, you know. Yes, Selma.
I wonder if there are scholars that are also looking at things like animal testing and stem cell research. I imagine in the sort of the pharma field, there's a lot of issues.
Yes, Selma. This is part of the field. Talk about animal testing, animal experimentation. There are many rulings by the Islamic Fiqh Academy about that, and they are talking about the ecology, the environmental issues. It's growing. It's growing to the extent that some people are questioning this growth. So it's, for example, in medical ethics, we know that it is the ethical issue related to medicine. But with the bioethics, now it's wider and wider and wider. For example, the Encyclopedia of Bioethics started as, I think, 3 or 4 volumes. Now it's 6 volumes. So, but they are talking about it. So in bioethics, we said the ethics of living, of life. So it's wider, and there are rulings or fatwas or verdicts about it. As we all know, that it's prohibited to use the animals in testing, except in some narrow areas with special conditions, right? So it's not allowed.
Can you elaborate more on that? Because I come from the scientific field. Do you mean like all of the clinical trials of mice and rats are prohibited?
It has to be it has to be justified. There has to be justification, and there has to be one of the justification is that you can't do the trials without the living things, the mice or others. So if there is a justification for using the animal, yes, it is permissible.
Is it caring for the life of the animal or for other reasons?
No, it's as the Prophet said, "Inna Allah katab al-ihsan ala kulli shay." You know, in Islam you have to be to care. Even if you are experimenting with the mouse, you have to take care of the mouse in a special way. Not to say, yeah, there is a fatwa about it. Yes, actually there is a book about it, written in Arabic, about experimentation on animals. Let's take those who, yes, please. Yeah, my colleague, the doctor, yes, please.
I have a question. So you mentioned that it's a growing field in the United States and the rest of the world. But for most of the physicians, they don't speak Arabic, and most speak like English, because the medical field is mostly in English. So how often this data or this discussion or paper is available for the physicians or other medical experts?
Well,
Are you doing something about it, like translation?
good question. This is a good question. And actually, English is the official language for teaching medicine in our Arab world. And there are only, I think, 3 countries or 2 countries. Syria, I think it was Iraq, Syria, I think only 2 countries teaching medicine in Arabic. But the rest of countries, they teach medicine in English. In fact, in my institute, the official language of communication in the hospital is English. We write in a letter, the memos. So, the books that I have mentioned here and the articles are all in English. And the resolutions of the Fiqh Academy, both Fiqh Academy, the international, and the Islamic Fiqh Academy, both published in English. Of course, published until I think it was until about 2005 or 2000 something. But if you want a translation of certain fatwa, You send them an email and you have to wait. I send them an email, I waited 1 month, and they send me back that they translated the whole fatwa, 6 pages for me in English. Because I was, I wanted their translation, the official translation. But on the other side, the books I mentioned, there are many other books written in English, but outside the United States. What I mentioned here is the books written from American scholar or in American institutes. But there are many. There are about 10 books in bioethics. The one I mentioned at the end of my lecture is an open access book, and it has Yet, we need to translate the original sources, as you said. We need to translate more, the details. That is the fatwa. When you talk about resolution and fatwa, it's 3 pages or 6 pages. But behind that, there are hundreds of pages of discussion, which is very useful. And I am not aware of any project, until now, that translate the original resources of discussions, which will be very useful. Because sometimes when you read the discussion, you can, it's enlightening. You can find, another, solution, or maybe it will be useful for you as practicing physicians. But yes, there is need to translate Arabic sources into English. Yeah. So thank you very much for coming, and I hope you have found this lecture useful. Thank you.